Hey guys, BionicleSaurus here, how y'all doing? And in this video, we are going to take a look at the Schleich Kentrosaurus. One of the few figures by Schleich that I actually really like. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So, as per usual, we will be starting with the overall appearance of this figure. And this figure, just overall, just glancing at it, looking at its pose and all that general kind of stuff, it looks really nice. The pose is incredibly dynamic, lots of really well sculpted musculature. It looks very real, very genuine and natural. The posing, which is something that Schleich often struggles with, is actually really good. As you can see, he's in a defensive position, squatting down in the front with his back legs more extended out and his tail swinging up into the air as if some marauding Allosaurus is attempting to hunt him down. Another wonderful thing about the overall look of this model is the color scheme. It's a good matchup and blending of natural earth tones and also some bright colors in there as well. Oftentimes Schleich will make these really kind of bright, cartoonish, almost very over-the-top color schemes. Some figures like their Dino-Reviews from 2014, for instance, if I remember correctly, has bright purples and orange, and they've done a good job on this model of really making it so that it's striking with all this maroon or dark red coloration coming down from the back, but also with a lot of this yellow and brown and gray, it still looks natural, and beyond that, the paint job is very well done. Oftentimes, there'll be sections of Schleich models that are just kind of a monotone color of paint, but this one has a lot of blending of different shades, and it's a very detailed paint job, and they actually, they applied it to the mold really well. I'm very impressed with that, and it's one of my favorite aspects of this figure. So, for overall appearance, honestly, there's just about nothing to complain about. So that's right, this figure, a Schleich figure, for its overall posing and color scheme and all that, actually gets an A+. Moving on to detail, and this figure is about average when it comes to detail for a Schleich figure. It's not incredible, it's not Papo or Rebor level, but it's certainly solid, and I am pretty impressed with a lot of the skin texturing and whatnot. It all looks very good. As you can see, I've zoomed in on the head here so we can get a better look at that. The only real downfall on the head is the inside of the mouth isn't incredibly well detailed. They painted the tongue pink, but the rest of the mouth is just the same brown as the head. I believe this yellowish brown color is the color of the plastic that this figure is actually molded in, or at least that's my guess. I'm not positive. But the eyes look really good. They aren't as glossy as they could have been, but I think Schleich still did a good job of making them look real. It looks like there is a brain and well, I don't know how much personality behind there, but it looks like they belong to a real animal, like he's looking around, like he's thinking about something, and they captured that a lot better than some of their models, because a lot of their models either just look like kind of just Jurassic Park monsters, or just kind of blank and somewhat just dead, you know, in the eyes especially, and so that's certainly a point in this figure's favor. Beyond that, beyond the skin texturing, as you can see, there's a lot of wonderful wrinkles and whatnot, like this skin getting stretched by his leg, extending back like that. That looks really great. If I zoom out a little here, hopefully I won't get my lights in the frame, you can see his tail looks really nice, the way not only is it bending, but it's really stretching and contorting, and it looks like he's really working and bending his whole body around with his tail. And that's something that's really cool to see. Another pretty good point of detail is the plates and the spikes along the back and tail. They aren't just left blank texture-wise, they actually have some really nice texturing that really shows that they are covered in keratin. They don't look like cracked fossilized bones like the ones of the Papostegosaurus, which is a figure I reviewed not too long ago. They certainly don't have scales, which is wonderful to see, because I am always kind of shocked at how many toy stegosaurs have scaly plates. It's quite appalling. These look like they are covered in keratin. They're solid, they're accurate, they look good. So, for detail, I give this figure a B+. It's not perfect, but for Schleich standards especially, it's very good. There's no sloppy paint, the skin texturing is solid, there's very little to complain about. but it isn't exactly remarkable. And now on to the last category, scientific accuracy. And oh my goodness, Schleich actually somewhat succeeded. This is probably their most accurate figure that they have ever done. There are hardly any flaws. I mean, let's see. The tail isn't drooping, it's held high. Of course, it is in a defensive position, but you can see just by the positioning of the overall body, of the legs, of the front ones being much shorter than the hind legs, you can see that it is holding its body in the correct stance, and that is great to see because so many Stegosaur figures have drooping tails and this old-fashioned, outdated look. His head is actually really small. That's so great because despite being the whole walnut brain, the whole walnut brain joke is so popular and so often referred to, but so many companies give Stegosaurus too large of heads, and they didn't here. I mean, it probably could be a tad smaller, but it's not off by much, and I'm not really sure. It might not be off at all. I'm not an expert on Kentrosaur anatomy. So yeah, overall, there's very little to complain about. This figure is really, really solid. It's, especially by Schleich standards, really accurate. However, there are some small things to complain about, so we'll go over those right now. First off, the front feet. While they do have the right number of toes, they have 3 too many hooves. All 5 toes on this figure have hooves, whereas in reality, only the inner 2 would be hooved. Another issue is the thagomizer. The spikes are pointing a bit too much, kind of back. They're too angled. In reality, they really should be pointing more straight out to the side, for optimal stabbing ability. This is something you see on a lot of Stegosaur figures. I'm glad to see the spikes aren't curved. They are straight, which is accurate and really great to see, because a lot of figures get that wrong. However, they aren't really angled off the tail correctly. They should be sticking more straight out, especially towards the end. However, the biggest issue is the positioning of the tail. This Stegosaurus tail is way too curvy. Well, maybe not way too curvy. It's not off by an appalling amount, but it is off by a notable amount. I've heard multiple people complain about this little curve at the tip where the tail suddenly just curves right at the tip of it to the other direction of the rest of the tail. That is certainly a little bit of an issue. I don't think it's that they couldn't do that, they just probably wouldn't. But beyond that, the tail as a whole is really curved to this side, and it's really bending in this smooth, curved shape. And I think between that and the little curve at the tip, they're probably trying to represent a motion of almost an S, like a snake moving, which is something that I could see them assuming that's how the tail maybe worked when it was being used, that's how the thagomizer would have been utilized, but it's really not. As far as we know, Stegosaurs, like most dinosaurs, had incredibly stiff tails, and they really just would have been bending from the base of the tail, so think less snake and more just a big metal boom arm off of a hinge just going back and forth. It would have been more like that. And, it looks nice, and it's not incredibly off. Once again, it's not necessarily that they couldn't do this, they wouldn't. It wouldn't be something that they'd bother to try and do with their tail. It wouldn't be a natural motion for them. So, for accuracy, this figure gets an A-. By Schleich standards especially, this figure is great, but even ignoring the fact that it is by Schleich, it's still a solid, pretty accurate figure. Besides the number of hooves on the front feet, the slightly off curvy tail, and the thagomizer, there's nothing to complain about. Literally nothing. I mean, you could probably find some very small nitpicks, but beyond that, this figure is solidly accurate. So, for the overall rating of this figure, I give it about an A. That's a rating I never thought a Schleich figure would receive, but this figure truly does deserve it. It's accurate, especially by Schleich standards. It's detailed, very well detailed. It has a great color scheme, a good overall look. The posing is really nice. It's a good figure. It's as simple as that. And I would definitely go as far to say that this is the best dinosaur figure that Schleich has ever produced. BionicleSaurus, signing out.